All right, guys, so it turns out Sean Hannity kind of admits here to brazenly lying on air about the 2020 election being stolen. So there's a court case going on right now. The Dominion voting machine company is suing Fox News. I believe they also sued other conservative media outlets because, of course, they pushed the bogus narrative that the election was stolen, and Dominion argues, hey, they defamed us in the process of it. So let's go through this article here. There's a lot of interesting tidbits in here. So this is in Vox. They say, Sean Hannity's damning deposition in the Fox News defamation lawsuit explained. Will Fox News have to answer for its misleading coverage of the 2020 election? Fox News' Sean Hannity may have uncritically elevated baseless conspiracy theories about widespread fraud committed by voting machine suppliers in the 2020 election, even though he didn't think they were true. That's the latest revelation out of the Dominion Voting System's $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News and its parent company, Fox Corporation, which is slated to go to trial in April in a Delaware court. Dominion sells election technology, including voting machines, that was employed in over 24 states in 2020, and it argues that, following former President Donald Trump's election loss, Fox broadcasted a series of unfounded and defamatory allegations about the company that it knew to be untrue. In the process, Dominion says Fox, quote, destroyed the enterprise value of a business that was worth potentially more than $1 billion. Okay, so let me just state this up front. I think it's total bullshit that we have, any private companies involved in our public election infrastructure. It just seems to me that that's something that should be done publicly. You know, I don't want the profit motive sort of fucking up the purity of our elections. Now, that almost sounds like a joke because our elections are totally impure now in a million different ways, especially with the big money that pours into our elections. But I think you guys get the point. Why should we, contract out to private companies that are for profit something as important as voting machines? So I don't even like that there are these private, voting machine companies. But having said that, that also doesn't give you license to brazenly lie about one of these companies and what they do. They continue here. According to Dominion's March 2021 complaint, Fox advanced the lies that Dominion had committed election fraud by rigging the 2020 presidential election, including by using its software and algorithms to alter vote counts. That Dominion is owned by a company founded in Venezuela that has tried to rig elections in favor of the dictator Hugo Chavez, and that Dominion paid officials to adopt its machines in 2020. Okay, so let me just comment on this here for a second. One of my favorite insane moments with this election conspiracy is when Mike Lindell went on CNN and he argued that he caught this specific county, I forget which state it was in, but this specific county, I caught them red-handed, look, here are the documents. I don't know why I just made Mike Lindell sound like Alex Jones, but he held up these sheets of paper that had all these letters and numbers on them, and it looked like, oh, is that some official voting machine code? And then come to find out, not only was it not that, but the county that he was quote-unquote auditing was never at any point even connected to the internet. So, whatever documents he thought he got, whoever gave it to him or if he made them up, whatever, it has nothing to do with the county where he says this is the election data from that county. And so they also, by the way, hand-counted to check the vote in that county. They did a hand recount, and they got the exact results that they thought they had gotten on election day. So, there was nothing fishy at all about what happened, but, he was literally holding up totally fake documents and acting like it was proof. Anyway, quote, Fox, one of the most powerful media companies in the United States, gave life to a manufactured storyline about election fraud that cast then little-known voting machine company called Dominion as the villain, the complaint states. One way the company claims Fox did this is by giving conspiracy theorists unfiltered platforms. Sidney Powell, who, by the way, is just as crazy as Mike Lindell, a former federal prosecutor who is also being sued by Dominion for defamation, appeared on Hannity's primetime show on November 30th, 2020, a week after she was unceremoniously booted from former President Donald Trump's legal team challenging the results of the 2020 election. She had also been a guest on Hannity's radio show earlier that day. Quote, there was a whole plot going on and a lot of people involved in this, Powell said on the evening show. She basically accused voting machine companies, including Dominion, of using their machines to, quote, trash large batches of votes that should have been awarded to President Trump and to, quote, inject and add massive quantities of votes for Mr. Biden. Hannity, a longtime Trump ally, didn't push back against those claims, even as concerns grew among Republicans that Powell's rhetoric had grown too extreme. He stopped short of making those same accusations himself, but didn't dismiss them either. He asked whether the machines had been investigated for the kind of tampering that she was alleging. Powell said it would happen soon, and asked why Democrats weren't looking into any of these whistleblower claims before ending the segment. Okay, so look, the reason why Sidney Powell was let go from the Trump administration is because even they realized this woman is out of her fucking mind. Her lies were so preposterous and so ridiculous and so silly, and this was one of the people who was convincing Trump, like, hey man, you have a shot here to really overturn this thing and to really expose like the rigging. And she was convincing Trump, along with Michael Flynn, along with Rudy Giuliani, and it was, this was actually a problem for a lot of the attorneys that were around Trump and his staff, because they had to get into a screaming match with Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell in the White House in front of Trump to tell them, like, look, if you guys say all these things are true, you guys say that, Dominion is working with fucking Venezuela to swing the election for Biden, give us evidence, give us proof. And they never had any proof. And the attorneys kept bringing up, hey, assholes, we've had over 60 fucking lawsuits over this, and we've won none of them. So, like, we've looked into your claims, and they are bogus. They are not panning out. And so the Trump administration let her go because she was that psycho that even they couldn't defend having her there anymore. And Hannity lets her on his show a week later after she was let go. And it's like, well, you know what you're doing at that point. You're just creating a narrative for the sake of your partisan audience. You're not actually doing news. You're not actually fact-finding. You're not actually, like, giving people the truth. 2 years later, he was asked about Powell's theory in a 7-hour deposition that was reportedly shared during a court hearing this week as part of the Dominion lawsuit. Quote, I did not believe it for 1 second, he said under oath. Powell also walked back her theorizing in 2021, with her lawyer stating, and I quote, no reasonable person would conclude that the statements Powell made were truly statements of fact. Wow. So when she's under legal pressure, knowing there actually are consequences, then she has to say, oh no, I wasn't even saying that these things were facts. Oh my God. These are total charlatans, guys. Dominion claims that this is clear-cut defamation. Now Dominion argues Hannity's apparently credulous stance toward the conspiracy theories and the fact that he didn't push back on them shows Fox deliberately misled its viewers about Trump's 2020 election loss, including on what was at the time the most watched show on cable news. Fox News has previously aired a segment across several of its shows designed to defend its own hosts and distance itself from guests' statements accusing voting machines and software companies of election fraud. See, Fox News, when they realized there could be real repercussions for this, they did sort of like run away at 1,000 miles an hour. You saw Newsmax and One American News Network. They went all in on the conspiracy theories, and they paid the price as well. I think there were lawsuits against them as well. And at one point, a host on one of those networks had to come out and read a statement about how, all this stuff is bogus. Kind of like how Alex Jones had to read that thing about Sandy Hook, too. So, Fox, like, after they already shit the bed, they were like, hey, man, shitting in the bed is really wrong. But, look, they're a more professional outlet than the other two upstarts, right? But the question is, do they have legal responsibility? Like, are they going to be held accountable for what they said before they distanced themselves from the craziness? Hannity's statement doesn't exactly help his network's case, but Dominion still faces an uphill battle to win what could become the most significant First Amendment case in recent years, particularly if the U.S. Supreme Court gets involved at some point. The Supreme Court has previously ruled that lies or inaccuracies do have some protection under the First Amendment, and that has made it difficult for defamation cases against journalists to prevail, but this case will test just how far that protection goes. Yeah, so there are like really big First Amendment implications here, because it is very, very difficult to prove libel, slander, defamation. Like, Dominion is going to have to prove material damages. Like, no, this really, really hurt us financially and we can prove it. And then you also have to prove, like, malintent on the part of Fox News or the Fox News hosts. In other words, like, they're saying it, they know it's wrong, and they know it's going to hurt Dominion, and they said it anyway. So it is a very, very high bar to clear. It'll be interesting to see if they can actually clear that bar. In addition to Hannity, Dominion has also deposed other Fox anchors, including Janine Pirro and Tucker Carlson, as well as Shepard Smith, who has left the network, and high-profile figures in the Fox News empire. That includes members of the Murdoch family, which owns Fox, in addition to News Corp, the New York Post, and the Wall Street Journal. NPR reported that Dominion attorneys are trying to prove that Lachlan Murdoch, who presides over those media properties, permitted or even encouraged Fox News to broadcast lies about fraud in the 2020 election, despite knowing them to be false. They have also deposed his father, Rupert Murdoch. So, by the way, if they can prove this, if they have, like, emails or text messages of this guy saying, yeah, we know it's bullshit, go ahead and do it anyway, because this is the direction that the audience wants us to go, then Fox may actually be in serious trouble. But again, I just want to let everybody know, very, very difficult to prove in a court of law, and if I had to guess at this moment, based on what we know to this point, I would say Fox is probably going to win the case. Judge Eric Davis has rebuffed Fox's request to throw out the suit on the basis of several protections for journalists and First Amendment law. The network has argued that in its coverage of the 2020 election, it was merely reporting on newsworthy allegations made by prominent actors against public figures as part of a dispute that had not yet been resolved, which would protect it from libel claims. The network also claimed that its hosts were merely stating opinions that could not be proven true or false, and that it had the right to report on defamatory statements that were made during official government meetings. Look, like, there's one part of this that's totally inarguable, okay? And that is, Fox News is not news. They're not in the business of facts and information and education and telling you the truth. They're not giving you the straight dope. They're not trying to remove their biases. They are, diving in the deep end of their own biases. And so the one part of this that, nobody, like, this is totally inarguable. Nobody could say, yeah, they're good at their jobs. No. The question is, does this cross the line into criminality? That's the question. But just from, like, a sheer news perspective, like, Fox News is one of the worst. I mean, it's comical that anybody considers them news. It's disgusting. It gives a bad name to news outlets. Now, I'm not saying CNN and MSNBC give a good name to it, because they don't. They suck also, just in a different way. But, like, this is so far away from actual news that it's incomprehensible. Where was I? In the immediate weeks after the election, Carlson also tried to sow doubt about the security of voting machines and called the race, quote, rigged for Joe Biden, and Pirro lamented that, quote, we are all being told to shut up and move on, after claiming that the irregularities were beyond minimal in the election. Because of statements like these, including by hosts, Dominion says those defenses shouldn't apply in this case. Quote, if this case does not rise to the level of defamation by a broadcaster, then nothing does, it stated in its original complaint. Look, I will say, just from a legal perspective, it is difficult to conceive of, like, the harm done to a corporation rising to a defamatory level. You know what I mean? Like, when you think of defamation, you think of, like, a malicious statement made on purpose to sort of ruin somebody's reputation, get them fired, or whatever. Like, that's what you think of when you think of defamation. For a corporation to say this is defamatory, that does strike me as much harder to prove and much sillier. But substantively, there's no doubt that Fox is wrong. And the stuff they said wasn't correct. It was totally bogus. It helped feed this hysteria in the country, which has lasted to this day. By the way, you could also argue they played a role in, creating the fertile environment which led to January 6th. And all that stuff is unforgivable. I'll be very, very interested to see what happens in this case. Again, from my perspective, as of this moment, based on what we know, it looks like I think Fox will probably win just because the bar is so high to prove defamation. But again, you cannot say that Fox does news. They don't do news. They're basically talk radio on TV. It's Rush Limbaugh. It's totally biased, far-right garbage. And this is actually a case of they're suffering here from something that usually new media suffers from, which is audience capture in this instance. who's really in control here? Like, who's really steering the car? Like, who's determining the direction of the company? And the answer, I think, here was the psychos in the audience, the far right. And, well, they fucked around, and they might find out.